Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Claire Peterson. I'm happy to present with you my philosophy senior thesis, in which I evaluated moral obligations to former romantic partners, and this project was advised by Dr. Dixon. So first, getting into some cultural context, I have a TikTok here, which unfortunately Microsoft Teams will not let me play it. But it is a very funny, satirical kind of TikTok discussing a kind of fairly widespread attitude among the population. He slams down this like NDA agreement, suggesting that if the two partners were to ever break up, that they can't pretend like they know each other and that they can sue each other if they ever pretend like they knew each other. And so it's very comedic, satirical, but the comment section is fairly unanimous in agreeing that this is such a good idea. And so even though it seems comedic from all aspects, it seems that there is a foundational ideology of wishing to dismiss former partners the moment the love in the relationship has died off. And while certain duties within the dyad certainly do break off once a breakup occurs, it doesn't necessarily seem that inherently all do. So this leads into a broader conversation on filial obligations to parents once parents grow older. So traditional perspectives would suggest that adult children should repay or provide financial, emotional, physical assistance to their parents in old age, whereas liberal perspectives argue that adult children owe nothing in repayment to their parents because children don't ask to be born. So when considering variation in relationship between parents and children throughout life, both perspectives seem plausible, but there's a better way to handle it. And so the first section, this suggests about the friendship model. It was created by Jane English, revised by Dr. Nicholas Dixon, and suggests that duties rely on the context of voluntary, loving relationships as well as various other qualities. Due to our not asking to be born, it seems that parents take on the role of raising a child more as a favor than as a duty. And we would not look as a favor that we should demand favors be repaid. Instead, duties are the ones that should be repaid. So if I lend you $1, it would be your duty to give me back another $1. Whereas if I were to do a favor for you, I wouldn't come at you being like, you need to do another favor for me. And so English bases this model on the idea that we have inherent duty in our friendships. And these aren't reciprocated like one-for-one duties. These are just general friendly gestures that make a friendship what it is. And so when children become adults, they may choose to remain friends with their parents. And for that reason, they may happily carry out repayments of, or not repayments, but acts of kindness and fulfilling the needs to their parents. And this kind of basis is made on the fact that they're friends, not based on the parent-child relationship. And so Dixon's revision addresses circumstances in which there's no longer friendship present, but maybe there once was. And he suggests that we can have residual duties from the friendship that once did exist. And so even if a cold shoulder is turned because of estrangement, there might still be a residual duty there to fulfill the needs on behalf of the friendship that once did exist. If we were to simply turn a cold shoulder, we might make the other person question whether there was ever a relationship that was truly meaningful or whether or not we have any respect for what did exist. And so for that reason, when we're looking at exactly whether there is a moral obligation there or not, we can look at several different things. The first being depth. How deep was the friendship between the two parties? The intensity of the specific need. So if a parent requests help with one thing, how intense is that need for it to be fulfilled? Also, the cost of fulfillment. If a parent comes to us asking for something, how much is it going to take out of us to fulfill that kind of need? And lastly, the reason for estrangement. If it was a really painful, traumatic estrangement, then there might be lesser of a need to fulfill it than if it was just simply moving away and no longer being close to maintain a friendship. So removing this into romantic relationships, we can see that the same kind of thing can carry through. And I looked at this in a much more moderate sense of like looking at the in-between conversations, but for sake of time, I'll just talk about the two extremes. So first, Fleeting relationships can be described as relationships that are short-lived. They carry little personal value, little emotional damage left after a breakup, and so it's the lowest level of residual duty. So, for example, returning clothes or tasks of similar effort, sharing pleasantries, like when meeting each other in public. If you see each other at a restaurant, being like, hello, rather than just pretending like they're not there. And this kind of respects that there was once a relationship there. We're not treating them as a stranger, but we are respecting that there was once a relationship without going to extensive grounds to fulfill their needs. On the other hand, deep and attached relationships would hold a very high commitment between partners. And they generally involve full maturity where everyone's aware of what they want and need. And that way they're able to overcome obstacles and grow throughout their relationship, causing a lot of emotional distress upon breakup. So if you can imagine a set of partners who've been together for many years, they share a warm, loving, healthy relationship and look forward to a future together. Both partners have decided they don't want children, but they adopt a small kitten instead. One year they decide to visit partner A's hometown for the holidays. And after arriving, they meet the partner A's new niece. And immediately partner A falls in love with this kid. And partner B is a little bit more hesitant. The niece is very well tempered, but maybe likes to pull hair. And partner B finds this irritating, but partner A finds it a little bit cute and endearing. And so after returning home, the partners honestly discuss their feelings and discover that there's a kind of contrast there between what both partners want in the future. Both partners have decided that that one wants children, one does not want children. And so they choose to break up because any kind of compromise would lead to resentment with this fundamental of a difference. And so later on in life, they both get married. They both moved on. One's very rich, one's very poor, and the poor one has kept the cat. After taking the cat to the vet one day, after the cat gets sick, partner A, the one with the cat, decides that it's going to be too expensive for them to give the treatment that the cat needs. And so partner A reaches out to the richer partner B and asks for financial assistance in taking care of this cat for however long it'll live. Now, partner B could easily just like turn a shoulder, that's in the past, not even consider it. But it seems that that would be kind of a disrespect to partner B's own integrity, to the relationship that they once had with partner A. And so for that reason, it seems it would be a bit disrespectful for partner B to not fulfill the duty to financially assist partner A in helping the cat. And so to do so would be to fulfill that residual duty. But it seems that any action beyond that would be not an act of virtue, or would be an act of virtue, not obligation. So for example, perhaps partner B decides to help take the cat to appointments. That would be a virtuous act for sure, but that wouldn't necessarily be a moral obligation. They would only be required to fulfill the financial assistance request because they have the means to. It wouldn't be terribly challenging, and there was a really deep relationship there that didn't end in a traumatic breakup. So moving on into some other considerations. Obviously, there's going to be other factors that influence whether or not residual duties are present. The first seems to be abuse, relating to Kantian principle of treating oneself as an end in itself and not as a means, or letting other people treat one as means. It seems that our duty to ourselves supersedes any residual duty to a former partner. So to protect oneself is more important than to fulfill the needs of another. So for that reason, residual duties would be relieved. Another would be trauma. So imagine a woman who is very excited to get pregnant with her partner. Both of them are in the baby room. They're all both excited. And then late in the pregnancy, the baby miscarries. And so unfortunately, the mother is fraught with hysteria, debilitating anxiety, suicidal tendencies, and just kind of feels horrible. And so she seeks out help at a psychiatric facility to get her problems resolved. And after leaving, reconvenes with her partner and finds that being around her partner kind of relapses her trauma because seeing him reminds her of all of the things that had happened. And so for that reason, they may choose to split up for the mental health of the mother. And it seems that there's no residual duties after that. Any residual duties of meeting together again would have the potential of recreating the trauma that the mother has already worked to get past. Next, for many hearing this, it might seem concerning that all relationships not resulting in trauma and abuse would inherently create an obligation to former partners. While there are other considerations that we would also take into place, like marriage and children, mutual splitting of ways seems like a good way to handle this. So imagine partner A and partner B from the cat example. Imagine if they were to hear that and decide that they don't want future things, but if they talk again, they might want to get back together, even though they know the relationship won't be fulfilling and they want to go different ways. So for that reason, they might both decide to forfeit the ability to rescind residual duties later on by deciding to never talk again, just for the sake of not getting back together again. While they loved each other and they had a great relationship and it's not traumatizing, they decide as a collective, we shouldn't talk for the sake of our futures. And so it seems like that could be a reason where residual duties end without traumatic other considerations. So next, what about death? What if the thing that ends the relationship is death? Is there still love there? What if there's, death wishes on the dying bed, and do you have to carry out those? Do you have a moral obligation to carry out those? And so Eamon suggests that a key factor of love is reciprocation. And so after death, you can't reciprocate. And a lot of people are going to be very quick to oppose this. And this is only one facet of a much larger article that he wrote. And it seems that despite this, it doesn't really matter, because Samuel Scheffler, in another account, suggests that relationships that end due to death, also known as archived relationships, can still derive us meaning, regardless of whether love is still present, because we can still commemorate and find meaning in that person despite their life being over. So for that reason, there might still be residual duties based off of the fact that we still gather meaning out of it. So one example in the show New Amsterdam on Netflix, the third episode, a young wife of an older man who's the CEO of a lucrative company has this challenging situation where her husband suffered a medical condition and got saved by the hospital and wanted to donate all of his money to help the hospital later on in life. And they were going to build like another building. And when she got there, she realized this other need was much more prevalent to help a very underserved population. And so now she's trying to decide between empathizing with this population and helping them and creating a foundation for them, or fulfilling her husband's wishes, which are less personal to her. And so her husband and her were not really in a loving relationship. The relationship was much more built on the financial assistance that was necessary between them. And so this situation is a lot more like tricky. It's much more like real life. And so it doesn't seem that a clear answer has come about here. But it does seem that using the facets of the friendship model, like we discussed earlier, would be a very helpful way to go about determining whether there is a moral obligation to carry that out or not. So, wrapping it up, it seems that there can be residual duties after a romantic relationship, despite the generational kind of presumption that after it's broken up, it's broken up. And moral obligations can be determined through the relationship levels as mentioned in the friendship model. And residual duties can extend after death. And I think a lot of people are going to hear this and they're going to think, that's a lot to take in. How do you ever apply that? And for that reason, I would suggest that perhaps therapeutic assessments of people's lives after they've gone through a breakup would help determine whether or not there is any reason to fulfill residual duties, or whether there are residual duties at all. So through having therapeutic assessments, perhaps that could be a way to kind of implement this a little bit further. So here are the references that I have mentioned within this presentation. And here's my email. Unfortunately, I was not able to cover everything in the paper. I talked about children, I talked about marriage, I talked about gossip, I talked about deleting nudes. And so there's a lot of other content. So if you're wanting to learn more about this, don't hesitate to email me with any questions, comments, or requests. And so thank you so much for your time. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your honors day.